Good evening, everyone. Shane here from ComX and Jerome.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Jerome. So today we've got Dave Guy and Haydn Spurrell come to talk to us. Also, at the end, we'll be talking to Brad Daniels about some comics that he's read. So, yeah, without any ado, let's get on with the show. Welcome to the ComX Show. AusComX Show, sorry. First, we'll be talking to Dave Guy, so I'll just bring him straight in. Hi, Dave.
Hey, Dave.
G'day, Shane. G'day, Jerome. How are you both?
Good, thanks.
I'm doing awesome.
That's good.
So, Dave, let's give everyone out there who don't know you a little bit of a spill about how you got into producing your own comics and a little bit about yourself.
I got into producing comics by, pretty much, when I got out of the army, I decided to write a graphic history about the ANZAC landing.
Cool.
I was very inspired when I read the official history because it's a brilliant read written by Charles Bean. And it's got some great stories. And I thought, it'd be really great if more people knew about this. So the first thing I did when I got out of the army, I actually started preparing for it a year or two before I got out. G'day, Spedsy. That was when I started to produce graphic stories in a graphic nature. I had dabbled with it before because actually when I was in the army, I did this.
Oh, yeah, cool.
This is Oakey Fire Station. Oakey's an Army aviation base up in Queensland. And this was a bit of a rough old comic about life in the station. A few of the events that happened. A few embarrassing moments for everybody involved. So that was I had a lot of fun doing that. And when I finished that and I got it photocopied and I gave everyone a copy, I put it in their pigeonhole where they get their mail. And the blokes came in and had a look and they were all just laughing and rolling around, grabbing their sides. It just went down so well. So I just thought, this is fun. It was more fun than if you gave me $100 for that. This was much better just to see them all laughing and enjoying it. And I suppose I sort of got involved from that point on. That was back in '95 when I did that. I had done, g'day, Danny. G'day, mate. I had done a few other, delved into comics. G'day, Lee. G'day. So I have done comics and that sort of thing. Just tried to do a few little stories here and there. Done actually, going back actually, after I finished being a fireman in the army, I became an illustrator and I drew pictures and did signs and calligraphy, and we do help the instructors in the schools to give organised lessons. We do training aids for them and stuff like that, posters, all this stuff. I went to Iraq for the Gulf, for the war. I was over there with the PSYOPs group, intelligence, and one of my jobs was we produced a comic strip for the locals, and it was to educate the locals on to report any terrorism, terrorist activities. We had a character called Basil. He used to run around the desert. He was a policeman in the Iraqi police force, and he'd go and arrest the baddies after they were doing something, like they'd drop a bomb or a rocket us or set up IEDs, and we'd say report this, and in the end, Basil would always arrest them and have them in jail and whatever. So that was
that's cool.
That I did. So that was another little thing I did before I got out of the army. Was that sort of thing. So and then I got out, made me an ANZAC legend.
Yep.
That's the hardcover version. It was first published in a landscape version, but I converted it to portrait. So that's 200 pages. That was the first thing I did. They say when you do your first book, do something short and simple. How's 200 pages?
Very short and simple.
So that was the first thing I did when I got out of the army. Yeah, thanks, mate. Yeah, and it's I'll keep rattling on. Danny's just mentioning my style, but my style when I was a young fella comes from this. A lot of it comes from this.
Oh,
this is okay. Norman Lindsay. Yeah,
when I got this as a 15 or 16-year-old out of the library, I became very interested in pen and ink drawing, and just the power of black and white illustration. And I wanted to be an illustrator, a book illustrator like Norman Lindsay.
Okay.
But anyway, that didn't happen. I just ended up drawing comics. But, that's my love of using the old steel pen.
Yeah.
And ink, Indian ink. And that's why I like to do that. And, of course, I like the old American cartoonists and comic artists, Jack Davis, Mort Drucker were, they were, as a young fellow when I read Mad, very inspiring. Oh, yeah. Here you go. That's the first Mad magazine I ever bought in my life. That's
awesome. You still own it?
Hello.
January 1971. So
you just froze up for a minute there, Dave. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. So and then that's the next one. I started buying Mad magazines. So that Mort Drucker and Jack Davis, of course, everyone a lot of people know them for their great art. They were an inspiration.
Yeah.
Also, as a youngster, these sort of books, War Picture Library, mainstay,
okay.
Black and white.
I've never seen this before.
Artwork.
Yeah.
Beautiful
That's
artwork.
Beautiful.
A lot of these fellas were Spanish or Italian artists that were came across to England to do the art for these blokes. But these DC Thompson or Fleetway Press, whoever it was that was putting these things out. And I used to love buying those for the stories and the art. I love the art, even as a youngster.
That's from the 60s, 70s?
Oh, yeah, back in the 60s. But they started making those back in the 50s and stuff like that. G'day, Rusty. How you going, mate? Here's an example of their art, yeah. This comic here I read, I pinched this off one of my mates at school. What a bugger. Because I actually borrowed it, but, it never got back to him. But this one here, this little comic is probably one of the only comics I ever got a chill up my spine reading. It was a real chiller. Gee, it was a good story. And, people say, they just throw away little things. But I tell you, that was a good story, and it gave me a chill as a youngster. I used to read Commando, yeah. Commando, I didn't read Commando so much, but I always had, these were out before Commandos, the War Picture Library and the Battle Picture Library. G'day, Zach. How you going, mate? And so Commando came out later on for me. I was onto these Mads by the time I finished buying this. So it sort of developed my taste had changed a bit. Actually, there's another box of comics up. Excuse me for a sec. I was going to grab these before.
Yeah, of course. We love seeing history here. They're beautiful, man.
Yeah, well, the black and white's what I sort of grew up with, and that's probably why I like to do it now. That's a bit about why I do it. But I used to buy. I got the very first when Core was a British comic. It came out, and I got the first 3 or 4 issues of that, 5 maybe, and then I missed the next issue, and then I missed a couple, and then I sort of stopped buying it. But I was buying a lot of British comics, and the Victor was one that I was very happy with. Yeah, Rusty, yeah, mate, yeah. So this is I don't know if you blokes have seen the old British. This is what I grew up reading.
Ooh.
These sort of comics.
Okay.
And Dandy, Core. This is Victor. There's Valiant, Tiger. There's all different ones of these, but they're just on newsprint. Wizard and Chips,
yeah. Around these date around early 60s, yeah.
Yeah. That's right. Well, to the 70s. I was buying them in the 70s.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay.
I never bought a superhero book. Only recently I've bought a few just to see what they're like. As I was saying to someone the other day, the closest I got to it was Nick Fury and his Howling Commandos. He was Sergeant Fury back then, I think. And I think it would have been probably written by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. I was only a young fellow. I was only about 8 or 9. And I was probably after a Sergeant Rock because I really love Sergeant Rock. But I had to grab Nick Fury, who's a soldier. I like army stuff. So I bought that. But it was just all this text. Couldn't believe it. I never bought another one. Yeah.
I was the same, Rusty. I was the same, actually.
Yeah.
I only discovered new comics at the newsagent probably, it would have been 5 years into my collecting.
Yeah, right.
I just knew secondhand stores. That's the only place I knew to get comics.
Well, when we was kids, we used to go to church on Sunday. We'd get our pocket money from Dad on after church. And on the way home, Dad would stop at the newsagent to buy the paper. So myself and my sisters would duck into the newsagent there and have a look at the comics, and we'd come out with, these.
Oh, yeah.
We loved Uncle Scrooge and Casper and Hot Stuff and all them. But I think these are the original ones. They must have survived 100 moves, these things, and they're still. I think these are the original ones that we bought back then. A lot of those old comics. Oh yeah, mate. Yeah, love Joe Cubitt's work, mate. Yeah, love it. I've got one here. There's a Sergeant Rock. Yeah. Yeah, that's not him there. Where's Joe? Where's old at the front there? Here he is.
Those are still nicely vivid.
Yeah. That's the sort of stuff I read as a young fella growing up, and that's what I probably started to get into for a long time. Mm-hmm. And that's what I tried to emulate when I started to do the comics was the Sergeant Rock and that sort of stuff. Yeah, so of course that went on for a while. At school, we never talked about comics. We played footy. I was one of the kids that I played footy and I played cricket.
Yep.
And sports. That's pretty well what we talked about. And I wasn't into cars or anything like that, but some blokes were. So we all had some blokes had interests that didn't affect other people, or we didn't talk too much. But I bought comics, and we had back in those days. Nowadays you could call them nerds. We didn't call them nerds. I don't know what we called them. We just called them those pansies. Those pansies up there. And but sometimes those blokes would buy. Mostly they were buying these sort of comics. I don't know anyone that bought a superhero comic when I was a young fella. Most of them were buying that. We never talked about it. So at school it wasn't discussed. Not because, I don't know, I don't think everyone said you're an idiot if you read them. It just wasn't talked about, I don't think.
It was sign of the times, yeah.
Yeah, and our environment, perhaps, because this is a country town. We're not in the city. I know. Well, there was one or two blokes who bought comics, but we didn't. There was no. I don't think there's any stigma or anything like that about it. It was just, you did or you didn't. You do what you want.
Yeah.
No one worried too much about it. No one got picked on because they read comics or anything like that. So that all sort of stuff just didn't. I hear people talk about that sort of problem. We never had anything like that when I was growing up, which was good. Everyone could pretty much do what you want, but I suppose you still got to do what the crowd does, and that's that's always going to be something that kids have to do. Asterix, yeah, well, that's right. Asterix, one of the kids came to school with an Asterix. He had two Asterix books because his mum came back from, I think, the Big Smoke. She'd been up in Sydney and bought him these Asterix books, and we'd never seen them. I was in primary school then. They were hardback and loved the art in that. They were fantastic.
Yeah.
Funny thing, I never saw a Tintin book until I joined the army, and I would have been 1997. I would have been 40 years old. Never saw a Tintin book.
Wow.
One of my mates was crazy about them. One of my mates, he was crazy. He had every Tintin book going. Oh, geez. Wow. So he introduced me to Tintin. So yeah. Oh right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's where I discovered Tintin, was a school library.
Yeah, right. No, I never saw them, but I really loved the art when I saw it, and the stories. I've read a few of them, and they're quite good stories. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Tintin also has a nice history to it about Hergé and the author in general. Everyone thought he was a Nazi sympathizer. So, long story.
Yeah. Well, was he in occupied Belgium when the Germans took over? And right, yeah, Phantom, Rusty, yeah.
Phantom was a big one.
My cousin had he had a stack of Phantoms. He had about his wardrobe was stacked about 3 foot high with Phantoms.
Oh wow!
What did Zach just flash up then?
Oh, hang on. He hadn't seen Tintin until it was a cartoon.
Oh, a cartoon. Was it a cartoon? I didn't know that either.
Yeah, they brought out I don't know how many years ago, but
right, yeah. So, but you look at Tintin, Hergé's work. He's got that what do they call it? The line. There's a term they've used for his line. It's just a dead line, I suppose. It's not cursive. There's no variation. It's just the one width the whole way through. But it's quite well done, of course. Yeah. I like that sort of stuff. Yeah. So what was that? What was the question?
Well, do you remember which was the first Tintin title you read? Because
oh gee, I don't know. I don't know. It would have been one my mate gave me. Probably it might have been.
Yeah,
the Pharaoh's Cigars or something, was it, or something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would have been, mate. Yeah.
I think I know the cartoon now. I was thinking the cartoon movie, but the cartoon series was, I think, 80s.
Oh, was it? Oh, right, yeah. Well, I had a big, long period where I didn't buy any comics, and that was pretty much, I might have bought one or two, but not many. It would have been when I joined the army in 82, I joined the army up until probably the 90s. Although I did actually, just before I joined the army, I went back to my hometown and was looking through the newsagent, and I found this.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
I'll just boost that up.
Yeah. And that really blew me mind when I read that. Heavy metal. And I went back, I read that in one day. And then I went back the next day looking for any more. They normally take them straight off the shelf, but then I found this one. It was the month before. So that one was February.
Oh, nice.
January. And then the lady said, oh, you're lucky to find that because normally we take them off the shelves. So that was, so I bought that. And then I just went out, there's a thing in the back of there, buy back issues. So I rode away to America and I bought all the back issues to get me up to date.
Oh, cool.
And back then the Australian dollar was about $1.15 American. It was a lot more than our dollar was 15 cents more than the American dollar, not less, more.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, it was a lot cheaper. It only cost me, I think it was $90 to get 3 or 4 years worth of heavy metal and catch
That's
up.
Awesome.
Get up to date. and so that really changed got me interested in comics. So then I was buying those every month. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Go to the Indies.
Recently heard about Yasagi Yojimbo. I think
yeah.
But
he's in Image, I think. Let me verify that. Yeah, Usagi Yojimbo is basically he's a rabbit samurai, basically.
A rabbit.
Oh, that's what it is. I knew the name.
It's from Sansekai.
I remember him now. Yes, I thought he was.
I know Dan Watts. He's bloody mad keen on it, and I've never read it, but I think it might be something that I'll have to investigate because they're saying it's a little bit a dark horse. There you go.
It's dark horse. Yeah.
I might have to investigate. I'm quite adventurous now with my buying. Who mentioned just a second ago indie comics? Yeah, I try to buy. Mostly, I've been buying Australian indie comics. Usually, when I go to the Supernova, I'll, not only to support Australian talent, but also because I enjoy it, Australian stuff.
Yeah.
I like the ones that are talking about Australian subjects generally. Australian situations in Australian cities. You got the old Southern Squadron and stuff like that, the Jackaroo and all those old comics that they had. I'd like to see more of that Australian influence. Killaroo now, it's been around for a few years, but it does Australian content. It's not set in the USA, in America, or wherever else. That's what I like to see. I guess people do set them in those countries and use those things because they think that may increase their audience. Which is, I can understand that as well. Yeah. But
there's a lot of comics that are based in nowhere as well. You get those ones.
Yeah, that's right. They're quite
like Battle for Bustle's not. As far as I know, I could be wrong. But as far as I know, Lee has just based that in some imaginary city.
Yeah, that's right, and that's probably a good way to go. An anonymous city, and But that's what I try to do with mine, with my Amazing Tales westerns. Yeah, that's right, Danny. I'd love to do an Australian western, and I've very toyed with that.
Very cool.
That sort of thing, and I've just finished inking. Have I got any pages here? I'll just set off my finished inks to Reverie for the Rick McClune story that I was doing. So these.
Oh, it's already finished.
I've finished the inks, so I sent those off to Gary today. That's the first page, written by James Broadhurst, and that's a bloody brilliant story. I tell you, when you get yourself a copy of this.
Oh, sorry.
Exilium is based in Australia. Oh, in space. Yeah, good. Yeah, well, Ben's a good mate of mine. Yeah, that's right. Exilium's a great series.
Yeah, it is. I'm looking forward to the next Kickstarter.
Yeah. Yeah, Ben's a top bloke too. Yeah, that's right. That's right, Rusty. Good on you, mate. Thanks for straightening me out there. Oh, yeah. Oh, good on you, Spedsy. Yeah, right. Bayswater. Of course. I should have known. Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, well, that's great. That's what I would like to see. More Australians doing that sort of things. Yeah, mate. Yeah, okay. I've heard your stories have been pretty much all illustrated. Good on you, Pete. Thanks, mate. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, where were we? Got sidetracked there, and I can't remember.
I think you've answered my question. I think so. We'll move on to Jerome's questions.
Yeah. I mean, well, this is not in the script, but I'm curious. When did you start drawing? Because I know that since you were young, you like comic books, but when did you start drawing them, illustrating them? Because it seems that you've been doing it for far too long.
Yeah, a long time. Well, you know, I've 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and well, 3 of them, 2 sisters and 1 brother older than me, and they were really good artists, good drawers, and we'd sit around as kids around school, around the table on a wet, windy day. I used to live in Colac in Victoria, and bloody wintry cold place that there now, I tell you. And on one of those wet wintry days, we'd sit around the kitchen table and we'd be drawing things, you know, drawing pictures, and you know they'd always be the better artists than me. But I've stuck with it, and they've sort of put it aside. So when we were kids, I remember as a youngster, I was telling someone the other night, I got a little notebook type thing, something like this, you know, that size, a bit smaller.
Yep.
When I was a little kid for Christmas, you know, a big present when I was about 5 or 6, and we went off to the longest day was the movie that just came out, John Wayne and in 1965 or something, and it was at the drive-in in Wagga Wagga. We were living at Narrandera at the time, and it was an hour's drive. So after work, Dad packed all us kids in the car, and we drove to Wagga Wagga to watch The Longest Day. And I still remember the parachutists falling down out of the sky, and I filled that little book with all these pictures of parachutists dropping down and Germans shooting them. So you know that's when I started to draw. I was at a very young age, and of course, you know, you always sort of draw, and it's such a cheap, easy way to keep your kids you know, minds busy. We didn't have computer games. We had a TV, but they only had 2 channels, and that, you know, that kept us entertained. I don't know what to do, but yeah. So drawing was always something that was near and dear to our hearts as youngsters. Yeah, and you know, as I said, I dabbled every now and then on comics, and I think the first proper full comic I did. G'day, Lee. G'day, mate. What is it? I've got it up here, I think. I've never slain anyone, this one. If it's in this envelope. Is it in this envelope? Yeah, here it is. Now, no one's ever seen this. Not even me, nobody. No brothers, sisters, anybody. So here you go, exclusive. This would be the first comic I put together. I used to be a fireman.
Oh.
I was a fireman for 14 years. And so I've done Red Coals, the fireman. So, because it's a moral. I used to write these stories and have a little bit of a moral. And the moral to the story is get out and don't give up. Keep fighting.
Good moral.
Yeah. So anyway, it starts off on the volleyball court. You know, every fiery knows how to play volleyball. If you don't play volleyball, you don't pass the course. Yeah. So anyway, that's the first. I was thinking maybe I might put that in, print that up one day, because
cool.
there's some not bad little pages there. Here's one.
Wow,
that's amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah,
that's probably one of the first comics I did. It was would have been 1993 or something like that, I think. Before I got out of the fire is never give up. That's right, Rusty. Yeah. So yeah, I've finished Fireys, finished as a fireman, and became an illustrator in the army. And that's where I learned to do calligraphy and posters and painting and stuff like that. It was actually better to do that course than it was to do a TAFE course, because TAFE courses that they don't really teach you how to draw or anything, which I thought they would, but they give you a pencil and paper and they just say go for it. But the illustrators course actually taught you how to mix gouache, when you did gouache, how to get it to the correct consistency, how to do calligraphy and use the different nibs and different pens for different sizes, and they explained that sort of stuff to you, and that was really great course that I did with my illustrators course. So I learned a lot in that. Really appreciated it.
Okay.
So yeah, Jerome, that was the start of my delving into comics.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good to know, because a lot of the guests here, they always start young, and they always start theirs, and what's this? And at some point they either stop or just start to doodle, and then they decide to go on with it. I mean,
yeah, so, that's right. I think everyone sort of shares the same sort of thing. You pretty much draw most of your time. Although Ed Kersley, when you spoke to him the other day, what did he say? He started drawing because he couldn't find an artist.
He was out of necessity,
Yeah.
Well, what was the hardest challenge when you started drawing comic books?
I think the hardest thing is distribution. I didn't have any trouble with writing a story. I didn't have any, it's hard work. You got to do a lot of work. You got to do a lot of hours. But the most difficult thing is promoting yourself and distributing your product. I self-published because I couldn't get anyone to do it. I think I might have approached one of those books. I can't remember who they are, Angus and Robertson or Dimmicks or whoever. Whoever prints books, I approached them and they weren't interested. Not professionally edited, not and all that, so they weren't interested in me. So I thought, I'll do it myself. So I published my book myself, but that was a lot easier than selling a bloody thing. That's the hard bit. But that ANZAC book, that was the first one I did. That's my bestseller. That is my bestseller. I always sell a box. Well, always. Generally, I take a box of 13 to a supernova or a comic convention, and I'll sell most of all the stock I got, or bar one or two. So it's quite a popular thing, and people want to read that stuff. Because I suppose it's a good subject because people are interested in learning more about the ANZAC story.
Yeah, exactly.
And so for that reason, it's my bestseller.
Well, how was your research process for the ANZAC legend? Was there a research process? Did you learn it from somewhere?
Yeah, there's a book. I haven't got it here with me, but it's called the Official History of Australia in the Great War or something or other. Charles Green wrote. I think I mentioned it before. It's probably it's thicker than this book. All right, thicker than that. That's the dictionary, Oxford Dictionary, but it's thicker than that. It's 1,000 pages or something. And I read that, and it was great. And so that was the research. That was the main thing I looked at. But I also wanted to improve on that because that was written in 1923 or something. It was updated, had a few updates over the years. But I had to improve on it, and I delved into about probably about 50 other history books to find out more. And there's a couple I got from the Turkish side, which helped a lot with a few things. And I also travelled to Turkey twice.
That's awesome.
The second time I was there for a week at Gallipoli, and I walked over all the hills and through all the valleys there, taking photographs, drawing, making notes for a whole week. And so when I sat down to draw the final images for the panels, if you're looking across, if you're standing at the spot that I mentioned in the book, in the background that I've drawn those hills, that's exactly what you'd be looking at. So it's almost like being there.
Very cool.
So the research, I sort of nutted it out that it took me a week to do a page. So there's three days worth of research. There's a day of what was the other day? Doing the drafts. Writing was the fourth day, and the fifth day was drawing. So that's the 5 days of doing one page. So it took me 4 years to do the whole thing.
Wow.
When I got out of the army, I had done some, had started it before, but a lot of those pages I had to redo because it was I hadn't really settled on a proper format. So when I got stuck into it, I pretty much worked 7 days a week. And I said, this is not going to be a project that I'll get halfway through and stop, put it aside, put it in and then eventually, I'll get to it later, and never get it finished. Ends up as a project in a box up in a shed. I'll finish that one day. Never happens. I was going to finish this come hell nor high water. So
nice.
I knuckled down for 4 years, pretty much 7 days a week, morning till night. After about 2 weeks of that,
dedication, Dave.
I was bucket. I had to have a rest for a week or so, and then I'd get back into it. But you had to give yourself a rest. You couldn't just do it non-stop the whole time. But I was determined.
Dedication.
That it was going to be a finished product, not half finished.
Yeah,
awesome.
And that's why it sells good, because the dedication that you put to it, the due diligence, basically.
Yeah. I think, I tried to put too much in it. That's the trouble. Probably the only thing, because there's so much to put in there. I wanted to put everything in there, but I couldn't actually, and I did trim it down. But I think I've learned with that with that volume that when I did the second one, which I've done the first chapter, wherever it is, the Krithia one, it's a lot briefer. I don't have as much writing. This is the first chapter of volume 2.
Oh,
so this has got less writing and more speech bubbles telling the story.
Okay.
So more, and I think I learnt from the first one. So this is a bit lighter on, and was a bit more brief with some of the explanations. Because the first one, I just wanted to put everything in, but there's so much to tell. You can't do it. You just can't do it.
So, Dave, was it that one or the bigger one that you got nominated for?
Well, actually, the bigger one was nominated back in 2014, and it was shortlisted. So that was the big one. So it was shortlisted in 2014. It didn't win, and this one this year has been shortlisted.
Well done.
So
awesome.
Twice the ANZAC Legend's been up for me.
Nice. Just goes to show it all that extra work you've done for it. Paid off almost.
Yeah, well, that's right. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I think because it's it's a different sort of comic in that it's a history comic. You know, it's not a um, just a fiction.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, mate. Yeah. So, and because it was a labour of love doing that first one, and in this one too, you know, it's a labour of love. It's something I'm very interested in. I really want to do it, and that's why I put so much hard work in it. Some of those, because I went there and I really studied the maps. I made a three-dimensional model of the thing, but you know, these sort of you don't. I just created that. I've never seen a map like that in my life, but it shows you it gives you an idea of the terrain at Hellers, which is on the toe of the peninsula at Gallipoli.
Yeah.
I put this. I think I put on Facebook when I published this one, got it printed and I advertised it's been done, and someone said, "Oh, you know, there's other stories than ANZAC," because everyone's sick of hearing about ANZAC, you know. But you know, I asked that person, "Have you heard of the Battle of Krithia?" I said, "No." Well, that's why you don't know the story of ANZAC. Battle of Krithia is part of the story of ANZAC, but people don't know about it until they read this. They don't know about it. They know about the landing. They know about Simpson and his donkey. They might have heard of Shrapnel Gully or the Neck, or the charge at the Neck, which was made famous by the movie Gallipoli. They may have heard of the Lone Pine. But what does it mean to them? It doesn't mean anything to them. They probably can't tell you much more than that. But if you read the books I've got, it's an interesting way to actually learn about what went on and just understand how much of a struggle it was for the soldiers involved. It was those blokes didn't sleep for something like 3 days or maybe longer. Can you imagine that? And under intense physical running up and down the cliffs, getting shot at, hiding, can't take a crap, sitting down, you've got to lie down, have a crap and a pee, and you know, it's under just incredible hardship. And people, you know, they know it was a hard thing for them over there, but they don't know really what it was like. Translator.
Well, sorry. Yeah.
And, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I didn't quite. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so as you can see, I'm quite passionate about the story of ANZAC, and I'd like more people to know more about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, mate. They were selling it for me. They were selling my book for me for a while, Danny.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been a good seller, and I've done quite well with that.
Yeah, and all of these are hand lettered, yeah.
Yeah, mate. Yep, hand lettered, all hand lettered. Yeah, well, there's a couple that I don't hand letter. This one was done. Hugh Dolan asked me to do this one for him. Eureka Stockade. He actually asked me to do Ned Kelly before that one, but Nat Carmichael had brought out Ned Kelly by what's his name, Monty Wedd, and I said, I'm not going to try and compete with Monty Wedd. No way. He's a legend. So when he approached me to do the Eureka Stockade, I did all the art for this one, and I did digital lettering for this because it had to go back and forward to the editor. And they wanted digital lettering. So, and Hugh read my ANZAC Legend book, and he said, look, mate, I want you to do it exactly the same way you did the ANZAC Legend. So it's exactly the same as that.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's why it's that pen. It's all pen and ink and pen line. There's a bit of brush work, but most of the shading and that's done with a pen nib and hatching. So that one had digital lettering. And here you go. Look, mate, once you get me talking, there's no stopping. Now this one here, this is a story that I started while I was still in the army. It's a story of in New Guinea, set in New Guinea.
Yeah.
And that was originally just done as a sort of a like those little war comics, like these little ones. Yeah, thanks, mate. And so this one has got digital lettering in it too, and that's because it changed a lot. Yeah, thanks, Rusty. This story, I changed it and manipulated about 3 or maybe 5 times the whole thing, but this final printed version, I reckon, is a good yarn. I really reckon it's a good story. And I had Jim Bridges from the Australian Cartoon Museum approach me at the Supernova in Melbourne and tell me he reckoned it was one of the best stories he ever read in his whole life.
Oh, wow.
He really loved the story, the characters, and just the whole situation, the way it was written and that. So that was good feedback to receive.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Actually, that one, when you read that one, you'll see there's a few different fonts used. Because it had a few different, as I said, it was done a few different times, and some of the lettering, I'll keep that bit, so I never bothered changing it, and I just did another font there when I changed the other one, and the balloon next to it or something. So, but it doesn't matter. It still reads the same.
Awesome. Well, we've run out of time, Dave.
No, you haven't. I've only just started now.
Haven't even started. We'll have to bring you back so we can chat some more.
Yeah, I better let Haydn on. He'll be wondering if he's going to get a chance.
But no, we'll definitely bring you on to talk about probably more of your amazing tales and so forth.
Yes, yeah, we haven't even started on that, have we?
Yeah.
All right, well, I will look forward to that. And look, I really appreciate you blokes putting me on and giving me a chance to, talk about what I've been doing and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, not a problem. A pleasure to have you.
Yeah, it's been educational, Dave. Very.
Yes, very.
Good. Thanks, Jerome. Thanks, Shane. Good on you.
Cool. Thanks, Dave. See you, mate.
See you.
See you, everybody else. See you later.
Okay, that was awesome.
Awesome.
A lot of history there. Cool.
Super.
Well, we'll bring Haydn on so he can have the chance to talk about his talk shop. So here's Haydn.
Hey guys, how you going?
Hey, Haydn.
Dave's a pleasure to listen to, so I would have happily, let him run over time.
So, how about yourself? I know I've had you on the other show, but for people who watch the Wednesday show, this one here, tell us a little bit about how you got into writing comics.
Yeah, sure. So started writing comics probably 5 years ago, maybe, sort of early to mid 20s. So I started reading them at about 18 or 19, pretty late, maybe. But yeah, so I got into them sort of late teens, and then I sort of dabbled in a lot of different types of writing, and I still do. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, I just came into comics, and it sort of felt like a really good fit because I love the collaborative experience, and I love the marriage of words and imagery, and I think that it just sort of gelled for me personally. So that's where I came into it. And so I went off and I made Chimera, which was a 3-issue miniseries that's wrapped up now. But I put out the first issue of that back in 2017, I think, off the top of my head. So it was a while ago now. But yeah, just gone from strength to strength since then, and keep meeting really great people and working on really exciting things to this day.
Awesome.
Yeah. Good to hear. Yeah. And you, what's this? You were writing well before comic books, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I've been writing since I was a kid. You know, it's been a forever thing. You sort of, I guess, you come under the class of aspiring writer for as long as you need to. So I'm also an editor and a publishing student, so I'm still at university. So just that whole world, that whole industry is a real passion for me, and I want to be part of it in any and every way possible.
Awesome.
So, yeah, okay. So where, I guess it speaks for itself. How did you start in the comic book industry? But what's this? What was your challenge before? I'll ask you the same question. What was your challenge when you started doing comic books? Because for Dave, it was distribution, and what is it for you?
Good question. I mean, I guess the very first thing was because I'm a writer solely, so I don't do my own art. So the first challenge was figuring out how that worked. You know, how I find an in, and I did find that quite tricky. So I actually ended up hooking up with an artist abroad. I found him online, and we worked together on Chimera, and it was sort of following that experience is when I really, threw myself into the Melbourne scene and have started meeting people through groups in person and online, and sort of getting experiences that way. But I guess figuring out how to be a writer in comics was a bit of a trick, and it remains a trick. It is challenging, because I have so much admiration for artists. They do, so much of the work. So navigating that from purely a script writing perspective is it's sort of an endless challenge, especially because every artist is different and every artist has different ways of working, and so you have to work with them and figure out how do you tell a story that is the right fit for both of you, and how do you deliver the information to the artist so that the artist can deliver the information to the reader, and so on. And that's before you bring into account, your letterers and your colorists and everything. So, it's a huge process.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah. And now, what are you doing? Like right now, what are your current projects?
So the big thing I'm working on at the moment is an anthology called Satellites. So it's a science fiction anthology that I've put out a call for submissions. So I'm inviting writers and artists in predominantly Australia, but I've had some interest abroad as well. But anyone who wants to get involved, contributing pages from 1 to 4. From 1 to 4 pages to the anthology overall. I'm accepting pitches and portfolios at the moment. So basically what this book is meant to be is that I've tied it in with my my postgraduate studies. So what I'm doing is I really wanted to explore what authorship means in such a collaborative medium as comics. So the best way that I thought to do that was to actually curate a comic from an editorial perspective, and then have a look at what that process looked like and what the final result looks like, which is why I'm not actually accepting finished stories. I'm reaching out to people who want to get involved in a production. So we'll start next month, and we'll aim to finish it in September. So that's sort of the big thing that I'm working on at the moment, is sort of, and I've already had quite a bit of interest, which is amazing, even from some people who are in the chat room tonight. So I'm really excited to sift through those submissions. I've already had a look at some of them, but I'm really excited to start getting back to people and getting the ball rolling, because I think that it's really exciting, especially from an editorial perspective, because it's a bit of an unknown in comics. Sort of, I guess the layman can determine vaguely what an editor does in, say, a publishing house for fiction novels or whatever, but it's a little bit less clear in comics, and that's another aspect in which I want to kind of interrogate.
Nice. Haydn, just so I know, is there an easy way for people to get in contact with you if they're interested?
Yeah, they can reach out to me in any way. Like, I'm available everywhere. You can also find Imposter Publishing on Facebook and Instagram. So that's the label that I'm going to be publishing the anthology through. You can email me at imposterpublishing@gmail.com. Or if you go to either of those social media platforms, you will find the call out really easily. It's just a Google form, and it has some really direct links to a submission screen where you can just have a look at what we're asking for.
Just to check, is that the correct spelling?
There's an O instead of an E.
So I can't spell.
No. Me and Spedsy have had lots of chats about this one. It's an O, but it's commonly spelled with an E, so it's sort of.
Oh, good. I thought I was done it wrong.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
It's okay. It's an alternative spelling. So.
I'll put it up there for everyone so they can see how it's spelled then.
Beautiful. Yeah. That's sort of the big thing. And again, I've got some really talented people interested in being a part of it. So it's incredibly exciting, and I'm so thrilled to be getting to work with some of these people. Both people I've worked with before and also people that I haven't worked with. And that's, again, part of the fun, part of the challenge, and part of the learning experience that is this medium.
Well, are you not putting the carriage before the horse, but are you planning to make this, is this a one-shot? Will this be a regular thing?
I'm hoping so. So as I said, it is functioning as both an anthology release that I'll be putting it out for purchase, but I'll also be using it for my studies. However, beyond that, I really do hope to continue it on and create other anthologies, whether it is a Satellites issue 2 or whether it's a completely new thing. But I want to try and make this a regular thing, assuming that I have some interest and people get excited and get on board. So definitely.
Awesome. Excited people.
Yeah. Because I gotta admit, I'm also trying to learn about sequential writing right now. I've already told Shane about it, and I'm also looking to put out the story in the future. So I wish I can. What's this? There will still be a call in the future, you know.
Yeah, I mean the call out for this one's still open, man. So feel free to submit something.
Well, awesome. So, okay. So, what titles did that inspired you to start creating comic books? Do you have any?
Yeah. So one of the first things I got into was The Walking Dead. So that was that played a big role in me getting into comics to begin with, as well as Scott Snyder's Batman I was really into in those early days. But as I sort of, dove further in, I found that I was really inspired by writers like Brian K. Vaughan. Why the Last Man and Saga are just incredible. Also Neil Gaiman, which is a kind of an obvious one, but The Sandman is really special. And also Ed Brubaker, he's a huge influence on me. Which is interesting because he's a very sort of narrative writer. Like, he writes a lot of narration, which is something I absolutely can't do. And it's sort of almost that thing that you're actually, prompted to avoid doing, especially if you're, an early career comics writer, is that narration can often act as a bit of a, it's there. And if you're using it too much, it might be to try and make up for a lack of clarity in your own storytelling.
Makes sense.
But someone like Brubaker just manages to pull it off in this really wonderful way, and not a way I've been able to do just yet.
Oh, don't worry about it. I've read a lot of comic book writers who are really good at narration. If you'll eventually be interested in Japanese manga, there is a guy there a manga artist called Yoshihiro Togashi. He excels at doing narrative stories and using narration as his tool, man. So if you're looking to improve on that, he's a good source for it.
Yeah. Totally.
So, okay, tell us about how your typical day goes when you start working on your comic books. We're interested in knowing it. Yeah.
It's a lot of in and out of the. It can be a messy process, actually. Sometimes it'll flow really easily. Although when it does flow really easily, I actually find that the editing of it later on is far more intensive, which is a bit odd. But I also often find that when it is a little bit harder, I might actually be thinking a bit more about what it is I'm putting down, because it feels like I'm pulling at teeth. Whereas if it is flowing, and sometimes that's the best way to write, is just to let it spill out. But that'll often mean that I need to go back and sort of take a really critical eye to that work that I've put down. So it's probably, I'll start writing, and it probably takes me, I don't know, it probably takes me about a month to write an issue of a comic, just by the time I've written it all down, and then by the time I've edited it and spent time with it, and then I'm sort of also working on other ones at the same time. But I might also be working on, say, if I've written an issue 1, I might be moving on to an issue 2, but I do still want to be thinking about that number 1 if it's still in draft mode. As in, if it's not yet with an artist, I'm still thinking about where has it started. So the process differs depending on what the publisher wants, which is Gary Della for Reverie. So sometimes he will ask for a story written, and he'll want 3 issues to be put down before they enter production. And that can be a really beautiful opportunity, because it can allow you to write all 3 issues in one go, and you can sort of retroactively look at what you've put down and how can you strengthen it in terms of what you're setting up and what you're paying off. But then in other times, you're writing an issue 1 that needs to get to the artist straight away, and you're sort of, okay, you write issue 2, you're devoted to that story, and you've obviously written an outline, and you know where you want to go, and you need to be a lot more, I think you need to plan a lot more ahead in that instance. Whereas if you are writing a 3-issue limited that just one and done, you can spend more time planning that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And are you the type of writer who jumps from scene to scene, or are you a writer who writes from start to finish, or do you just write what's on your mind and then fill the gaps in between?
Bit of start to finish. I think I'm a very linear sort of thinker. I think I can get very overwhelmed by the process if I'm going in and out, but that's when editing might come into it, where I will break it down into those scene by scenes. And there are opportunities where, say, if I'm working with an artist and we have a rapport, that might be where we actually break up that, say, if thumbnails or sketches have been drawn, we might actually break those sketches down into each individual plot thread and take it all out of order. And that's a really fun way to reassess the flow and the pacing of the story.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think that every project for me so far has been a little bit different, and I think that's part of the beauty of comics, is that and this kind of goes back to what I'm talking about in terms of my interest in authorship in comics, because I don't necessarily think it's as straightforward or as sort of factory line as we're led to believe.
Because some people think it's some comic book creations are factory lines where everyone just adds one thing to it and then it finishes at the end. But it's more collaborative than that. Again, I guess that's the way to put it. Yeah. So, well, how do you communicate your vision with your artists? I mean, how do you communicate what's the picture in your head to them, and how do you make sure that they get it? You know?
Yeah. Again, it depends on the artist, and so if, for example, I'm working a lot with Ben Sullivan at the moment. We've written 2 comics now together, and we're sort of working on Mr. I Detective Agency as our sort of our big current project. And we've been working on a lot of shorts together as well, sort of one-page things. Because of that, we speak quite regularly, and we do hash out the story, and we hash out the action and the pacing and yada yada. So the scripts for him, they're not super detailed. They're pretty straightforward with what I think needs to be there. And he's incredible because he he's so often added things to the story in his visuals that I didn't even think of, and I look back at it and I wish I could take credit. So yeah, he's an enormous talent. But then obviously you'll often sometimes work with artists who you've never spoken to and you may never speak to, and in those cases you have to be a lot more rigorous, I think, with your direction. And especially I put a lot of effort into sort of, I guess, a preamble for my scripts. So a bit of a character breakdown and a plot breakdown, some reference images if need be, both for character and location, which comes into it as well with an artist you have rapport with, but there's a little bit more flexibility if you know that you're going to be communicating together throughout the process. But there's just so many different ways to do it. Like I'm practicing Marvel style right now with someone, and that's been a lot of fun. I didn't think I would be into Marvel style, but we've been toying with it, and that's just a whole other ball game.
So what does Marvel style mean?
I'll probably butcher the description, but. I guess I'll apply it to the one I've done, is that I've written a 4-pager that's, it's basically a couple of pages of prose writing. So, page 1, and then a basic paragraph or 2 on what happens on page 1, what happens on page 2, what happens. So I'm not giving a really structured breakdown of the script. I'm not giving a panel 1. I'm not including dialogue at this stage. And then I give that to the artist, and that makes it a lot. That gives the artist a huge amount of freedom. It's how Stan Lee and Jack Kirby did a lot of their work together. Hence the name Marvel style. So yeah, it's and so I'm getting sketches back, and now I'm thinking about what the dialogue is going to look like based on how the artist has interpreted that really basic script that I've given. So yeah, it's definitely something I'll want to do again, because it's been a really unique experience. Yeah,
it sounds really interesting.
Yeah, and never knew that it existed, to be honest with you. I'd have to look it up after this.
Yeah, check it out. It's really interesting.
Yeah, so let me ask you this one thing. Are you particular with your vision, or do you like to do compromises with your artists? Because it's a common problem among writers that they have this vision that they want, and at least there's some element of it that they want the artist to hit. So are you very particular with what you see in your writing, or if your artist does something that's not in your head, do you do compromises with their work?
I mean, this is really, really interesting question, because I think that there's a death of ego that has to happen when you're writing, and particularly when you're writing in collaborative medium. I think that I don't think you get to go into comics with a vision that you do not want to compromise on. I think that that moves us back towards thinking about artists as basic work for hire, and I think that really devalues the work that they do for the medium. And I think it sort of casts the writer in this sort of god, this godlike position that to me it feels uncomfortable. I can't speak for every writer, and I certainly can't speak for the medium objectively. This is sort of just my opinion, but I always allow the artist to be able to dictate where the story is going. And say I've mentioned Ben Sullivan and I's sort of work together. I feel like our conversations have made my writing better. And I think that the story we're telling is very, very different since we started collaborating on it than it was when I sort of sat down with a pair of headphones in my ears and plotted it out way back last year. And I think that's just one example of where I just really relish the opportunity to work with artists really closely. So any opportunity I get to do that is I'm just like really grateful for it.
Cool.
And
awesome, Dave.
Dave's back.
And do you have a specific genre or kind of story that you like writing about that you can write about it quickly and efficiently if you'll ever go on writing about it,
Not necessarily. I think I lean towards a bit of I lean towards science fiction. I'm just a huge fan of sci-fi, but I also lean towards horror, but sort of maybe a gothic style of horror. I think that I find those really interesting. I think you can do some really powerful things with it. I think that's sort of where we've taken Mr. I. Hopefully Gary doesn't mind. we've been working on pages, and I'm getting art from Ben, and we're sort of talking, and we're thinking, are we it's getting pretty graphic, but it should be fine. So I find sci-fi and horror, I see a lot of similarities between the two genres. I think that there's a lot of innovation there. So I guess that's where I sort of lean towards, and I think that they're really good genres for metaphor and for exploring themes within those genres that aren't necessarily tied directly to the genre.
Which specific sci-fi IP do you like a lot? Which ones did inspire your body of work?
Are we talking comics or just everything?
In general, sci-fi in general.
Yeah.
More about it.
I guess anyone that knows me well enough knows I'm a huge fan of the Alien franchise. I think from a storytelling perspective and just from a visual perspective, those are huge influences on me. Namely the first one, but also, the Blade Runner, both Blade Runner movies. So I guess those sort of sci-fi noir and sci-fi horror are sort of big for me. In terms of comics, I'm thinking it's interesting because I've tended to lean towards sci-fi movies more so than sci-fi comics. When I read, if I'm going towards especially creator-owned stuff, I'm probably reading more crime or more maybe horror, but a lot of crime. Whereas if it's film or it's television, it's probably where science fiction gets me more. However, I'm a huge fan of Rick Remender, so I really enjoyed Black Science, and I really enjoyed Tokyo Ghost, I believe it was called.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
And Alien, the Alien franchise is really good. I actually am very interested about learning more about Wayland, so I need to dabble into that a little bit more.
Have you seen them all?
Not the first two. No, not. And I've played the game, so I would need to. Yeah, I would need to walk a little bit more and read a little bit more of the lore.
I mean, I think that's what's really strong about particularly that first movie is that it's so full of mystery and it doesn't feel the need to answer those questions. And
exactly,
and even after however movies are in that franchise, 6 or whatever, I still find that I can go back to that first one and I can still just get enveloped in that mystery all over again. And I think that's a really special thing from a writing perspective. I think that's a really fine line that you walk is how much do you need to answer for your audience and how much can you leave ambiguous? Can you just, what do you need to answer in order to satisfy your viewer? And I think that's such a skill, and I don't think I've mastered that skill or anywhere near it. But I very much admire filmmakers, writers, anyone who manages to pull it off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they definitely did a good job in Alien. I mean, you spend most of the movie scared of a dot on a radar.
Yeah.
You don't actually see the alien until close to the end. So
it's a whole lesson.
They did a really good job of it.
Yeah. I mean, they get less scary the more you see the alien as it goes on, in my opinion, frankly, So it's,
Well, yeah, and how do you write enough that your readers get to clearly understand your message in your stories? Because there are stories where the plot can be very vague, and so how do you write that? How do I put this? How do you put your writing enough that your message comes clearly through the comics?
I'd have to ask my readers if I actually have managed to do that. I mean, it's something that I think about all the time, and it's something that sort of plays on my mind the more and more, the closer and closer I get to submitting a script, and it sort of plays a huge role in the editorial process for me, is making sure that everything is clicking. And even then, you can be too close to it. So I do Spedsy, Rob and I talk a lot, and so sometimes I'll get him to read a script that I've written just because there comes a point where there's nothing more I can do. Like, I've spent too much time with it, and this is where an editor is really valuable. And I think that there needs to be more of it. But so I guess I can't really answer your question, only to say that it's something that I'm endlessly thinking about, and I'm trying to improve all the time and make sure that, because you can have a message or a theme that you want to explore, but the story you have to pull off the story first, and then that will elevate the theme or the message that you're going for. You can't lead with the message. I mean, they work in tandem, but if your plot is messy and your characters make no sense, then your reader is not going to care about your message.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Well, is there anyone, any creators, Australian or not, that you'd love to team up and create a comic book with?
Oh, Jesus.
And they shouldn't have worked with you before, so.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm very early in my career, so I'm humbled anytime I get to work with anyone who's either in the same place as me or who's been doing it longer. I'm even more humbled. It's just, I mean, maybe I'm sort of ducking your question a little bit, but every experience I get to have with any artist or any writer is an opportunity to learn. So I'm not, I don't particularly have a wish list of people that I want to work with. Same goes for characters or titles or books or publishers. I'm sort of I'm trying to take it one book at a time. I think it can be really easy to think a little bit too far ahead. I've certainly fallen in that trap before, where where you can feel like, and you put pressure on what you're doing in the present because you're thinking so hard about what the future is going to look like, and subsequently what that book will do for that future, or what it won't do for that future. So it's a really easy trap to fall into, is to start thinking, where do I want to be, or who do I want to be working with, or etc. So yeah, I guess I just try to focus on what I'm working on now, who I get to work with right now, and what that might mean next. But I'm trying to sort of, one project at a time, knowing that there's another project that I have to do next. And beyond that, I need to just put that aside for the time being and do the best job possible right now.
Yeah, and
good answer.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really nice. And well, knowing that you're trying to develop your skills, or are there any skills that you feel like you still don't have yet, that you wish that you can develop in the future?
Oh man, I mean, all of them, but look, I find that something that's really easy to fall into is if you're lettering your own comics, which I'm doing a lot of at the moment. One thing that I found myself doing at times is rewriting dialogue if I feel like it needs to be rewritten. I suppose whether that's a positive or negative depends on the creator, depends on the situation, because again, comics is, it's always different. But for example, if I imagine if you're working for a DC Comics or whatever, that you're not lettering your own books, which means that once your script is done, it goes to your editor and it's pretty much out of your hands. So I would love to focus more energy on making sure that my dialogue is as good as it possibly can be during that script phase. So that I'm not needing to go back and forwards. I don't think that's, because I think that there's an iterative experience there, because you can get the art from the artist, and that can dictate the dialogue. And I think that there's something beautiful about that at times. But again, it's about figuring out, am I rewriting dialogue because Ben or Rob or whoever has added character to this, or personality to this character, that means that that there should be a little bit of a tonal shift with these words here, or we could really hone in on something here. Am I doing it for that reason, or am I doing it because I have the power to, because I'm lettering it right now, so I'm just going to overhaul my own script, and I'd love to do less of that.
It comes to us sometimes. So are there any elements of your stories that you sometimes find a hard time developing? Because I've heard some creators some are weak at drawing women, some are bad at writing about people of color. So what do you think is the hardest element of your stories to develop, to write about,
Probably the ending. Endings really mess with me. They sort of, I think that there's a lot that you've got to do. I find that it's something really exciting for me is when I get to write a one shot, because you can just tell a beginning, middle, and end in 24 pages or 22 pages. And so I guess the longer a series becomes,
the more plots you need to tie.
The more that's going on, and that could very easily get a little bit out of hand or get away from you if you're not planning enough, or you're not as rigorous in your pre-production or whatever phase. Dave, just super hard. I've been sort of writing the Mr. I. At this stage, Mr. I is a 3-parter. Whether it's an ongoing, I guess it just depends. As always in comics, it depends on how we do. It depends on whether people are interested. But so I am writing number 3 with an ending in mind, thinking, if we don't get to do more, we want to be really proud of this one solid story. So the third issue has had many versions. So I think I wrote its first draft back in probably like December last year, maybe earlier. And I sincerely hope I don't have that version anymore on my laptop because I don't want to read it. I think again, this goes back to the influence of the artist, because had Ben and I not had such rigorous discussions about this, I don't think it would be nearly as strong. And I think that we're pretty close to a place where we are going to be really proud of what we're making. And I think that's, it's not something I've always felt when I've written, it's just by nature of it. Like, you can look back on your own work and not love what you did. And I'm hoping that that's not going to be the case with Mr. I, because we've spent a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of, we put a lot of passion into this story. So we can't wait to start putting it out, and hopefully we nail that ending that I'm so terrified of.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you've said it before, but are you free to tell us about the synopsis of Mr. I at the very least?
Yeah,
the general idea about it. Yeah,
just a non-spoiler version.
Yeah.
Yes, I guess. I mean, Mr. I spins off of Torn, so the character was introduced in Torn issue 2. Basically, he's a character who has no eyes, but he has, I guess, an arsenal of floating eyeballs that see everything for him. So, he can be in every crack and every crevice if he wants to be in Melbourne. His eyeballs can be everywhere. He can be watching everything, which makes him a very good detective. The story we're telling is about the people that revolve around him. I found that writing Mr. I he's quite a passive character and quite a flawed one. Flawed because his ability gives him such power, and I think that it gets to his head. So I guess the plot itself is about a person who's gone missing, and they've been Mr. I and his agents have been hired to find them, to find this missing person. That's a very basic premise. So it sort of spills out from there, and it gets a little bit wacky and complicated, and so we've tried to keep it action packed. We've tried to keep it flowing, but always with this thing in mind that Mr. I has this manipulative nature about him, whether he intends it or not. And I found it really fascinating to observe that from the other characters and how they interacted with him, and what his behavior or lack of empathy even at times actually does to those people that he pays and that he supposedly cares about.
Cool. Well, I just have a question for you. This will probably be your last one. Tell us a little bit about your 3-parter, your Chimera. Is that pronounced? Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, Chimera. Yeah.
Oh, Chimera.
Yeah. So, as I said, I started it back in 2017. It's basically about a girl whose dreams foretell the future and present. So anything that she sees in her dreams is something that's either happening concurrently or it's going to happen in the future. And the story is basically about her learning about why she can do that, but it's also about her trying to escape it. She's unhappy. So yeah, it's a 3-parter. It's very much the first thing I wrote. I feel very much like it was a huge growing experience and a huge opportunity, and I'm really proud of having just dived into comics and made it my first thing. And I learned a lot from it. And there's potential for a future there because I love that character. How a future might manifest, I'm not too sure yet. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I think that it did stem from, often when you write something, it comes from a personal place. So that came from a place that I was in back in 2017, which again may contribute to why there's a level of detachment that you sometimes feel with something you created, years ago, which is why it was such a relief to get it finished and get it out there. And I'm really chuffed that some people have read it and they really liked it. I got some great feedback from Lee Chalker. So yeah, anyone who's interested in checking them out, send me a message. And I'd love anybody's feedback, because it was a huge opportunity to learn and grow, and I'm still learning and growing. So yeah.
Well, what I'll do is I'll just, oh man, I'm so bad at this. I'll just put that email up again for anyone who's interested in being part of Satellite.
Yeah.
So there's the email, imposterpublishing@gmail.com, if you're interested in being part of Satellite with Haydn. And I guess contact you probably on Facebook or something like that if they're interested in Chimera. Chimera, no, I said it right the first time. Is that also available at Reverie at the moment?
Yeah, it's available on the Reverie website as well. So really easy to find. I've got a link tree as well on my Facebook and Instagram. You can find it there. Or yeah, just send me a direct message and we can hook that up.
There it is. I have got it here somewhere. There you go, reveriepublications.com.au. I didn't have your other ones ready to go, so.
No, good. Cool.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Haydn. It's been great talking to you this afternoon, or this evening, I should say.
No problem.
And I'm looking forward to getting my copies of Chimera 2 and 3. So, and I'm looking forward to getting to know Mr. I a little bit more as well. And I can't wait to see what happens with Satellite. That sounds awesome. Quite the journey as well.
Yeah, I can't wait to start, charting that journey and going on that adventure with all the writers and artists. Hopefully they enjoy the process just as much as I'm going to.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you very much, and I guess have a good night.
See you later.
See you, Haydn.
Yeah.
Take care.
Cool. And
that's very informative.
Very informative, and I am very much looking forward to getting more of those books. A bit like Dave Dye's as well.
Yep.
But I think I am guilty of the fact that Mr. I believe I have number 1, and he's in my to-read pile. So I do remember seeing that comic. So I feel a bit guilty that I didn't read that before tonight. We've got a comment here. Oh, just people saying goodbye. Oh, I missed a comment. Mr. I sounds like a blind Constantine. I guess that makes sense. And we can get rid of that. I'm so bad at using this thing. Cool. So, Jerome, I'm going to put you on the spot here.
No problem.
We're supposed to talk about comics that we've read, and I am very, very guilty of the fact that I have been flat out with these calendars. As anyone who knows about the calendars would know, I've been doing that or getting ready for our next Kickstarter. So I haven't actually had a chance in the last week to read a comic, which is a little sad for me and for this show. But yourself, randomly pick a comic that you've read and let's have a little chat about it. Hopefully it's one that I've read in the past.
Yeah, I mean, from the past week, I've been reading. What's this? I've been reading. What's the title again? It's missing from my. What's this?
Oh, here we go. Here's a question for you. We can talk about this one if you have.
I still haven't gotten around it, man. I'll be honest with you.
It is on his list.
Which is
on his list.
It's on my list because I'd love to be able to read it, especially since it's Celtic. You know, Zach, you know how much I love Celtic mythology. So Yeah, I've read what's this? The Four Horse Femmes. I'm not sure if
Four Horse Femmes. Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I skimmed that before I put it in the to read pile, so I haven't actually read it, but I have skimmed through it and have a vague idea what the story is about. So, are you talking issue 1?
Yeah, actually, I finished all 16 issues that I had over the past 3-4 days.
3-4
around
days.
That much. Yeah.
Don't tell Zach. Don't tell Zach.
Zach's gonna kill me. No, but the
that'd be by Stuart Black, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's from Stuart Black. Basically, then the gist of the story is there are 4 girls who are basically the part of Supreme Justice. It's the in-world what's this in-world version of Marvel Shield. It's a superhero organization that takes metahumans in and makes them their agents, and basically it follows an orphan girl named Talina, which has psionic powers, and she was basically taken in by initially a target of Supreme Justice, and eventually became an agent for them. Yeah, and
cool.
Yeah, it was quite the read, because initially, at least for me, the story started a little bit slow on the first couple of issues, and then it started rolling. It started rolling into this. In every issue, it went grander and grander in scale. And
awesome.
And then it eventually came. And then it eventually. I found that it's very easy to read if you're not the type who likes what's this? It likes a very linear narrative. It doesn't go. It doesn't make too many offshoots of the story. The perspective is. Yep. Yeah, the perspective is really straightforward, and there's this part where there's an arc there that lingers for a good 6 or 7 issues.
Oh, okay.
It really ties in really good, and eventually they flesh out the stories of all of the four girls. Within the team, so it's very much like the TV show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. basically.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it plays like that, but all 4 girls are
take it off the to read pile and actually read it.
I'm sorry, Zach. I'll get around it, man. I promise you.
And I'll just answer this question from Spedsy. Yes, Spedsy, I got it. I haven't had a chance to post it on my mail call posts. But yes, thank you very much. I did get it. Now, we have a guest with us to talk about comics tonight. This is Brad Daniels, so I'll just bring him straight in. Hey, Brad.
Hey, Brad.
Hi, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Yourself? Yes, we can hear you. It's all loud and clear.
That's good. Last time I was on, I was using my iPad, and it was super easy to sign in, and now I'm using my computer. A custom-made thing for doing this, and it was a nightmare.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Well, it's good to be here.
Yeah, so you've hopped on to tell us some to review, or just tell us about some comics that you've read, some Australian indies.
Yes,
so
indeed.
Start,
great question, and thanks for leaving it up to me where to start. I do have some comics.
Start at the top of the pile.
That's what I'll do. I'll start with. I was at Sydney Supernova on the weekend.
Cool.
I picked up a heap of new stuff there to check out, but this is one I picked up earlier this year.
I'll just zoom
and this is Misery Miss Muffet.
I haven't heard of that one.
B-side of Decay by Tim Burton. not Tim Burton, but a very similar, not Tim Burton, the Hollywood director, but a very similar aesthetic. So I don't know if he's like, I was actually sitting across the sky at the convention on the weekend, and I'm not sure if he is Tim Burton in disguise. He doesn't look like him. But yeah, this is like this is a dark fantasy sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But a little girl put in some sort of nightmare world. There are also, let's have a look at some of the creatures that she encounters in there.
Oh, yeah, I'll just zoom in on you.
She wakes up in like, well, I guess a mortuary. She's all
looks like it, doesn't it?
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is for people. This is definitely aimed at the crowd who likes Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, Tim Burton films, and all that sort of like dark fantasy sort of stuff. It's got a dreamlike quality to the story. If that appeals to you, then this is definitely the book for you. And it's, I don't know, it's a couple hundred pages by the look of it. So very little dialogue, a lot of silent panels and stuff like that. But if you look at this cover and you say, that looks like my jam, this is your jam. This is totally your jam.
Yeah, it looks like another IP. It's Don't Starve and another Coraline. Basically, it's a movie and video game.
I actually know one of the creators of Don't Starve. Sorry, just a bit of a throwing my thing out there. I went to uni with him.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
Yeah,
nice.
He's one of
drop.
the programmers. He's one of the programmers for the game.
Oh, cool. Wow. So, yeah, that's for like sick adults and twisted children, I suppose. That's a high recommendation for. Okay, now I'm going to go for something something that I picked up in Sydney, not once again earlier in the year at the AusCon pop-up that they had there.
Oh yeah,
and this is by Bad Harvey Publishing, which is Aaron Harvey and Chris Badenoch, doing the writing and art respectively. It says giant size first issue. This is another book. I mean, this is just like a couple hundred pages or something like that, or 100 pages or something. Now this is entirely inspired by 80s horror films. It's got a very Thing, like John Carpenter's The Thing feel to it. It's got a crew of, what do they do there? Like, not scavengers. They like they go through old ships and like ships and like basically.
No, I think you do call it a scavenger, don't you?
I'm sure there's
probably a nicer
different
term.
route.
Yeah, it's probably
a nice little term. So it says celebrating pre-code comic classics and paying homage to authors like and filmmakers like H.P. Lovecraft and John Carpenter. It does what it says on the tin. I will say this: I enjoyed this book, but it's a slow read. It's a slow burn. Not a lot happens in the 100 pages that they have there. And this is part 1, and they're bringing out the second part, I think, later in the year.
Cool.
It's got a sort of like the film Alien. It's got that vibe. It's very like these guys are working class. You have all the different personalities of everyone who are introduced, and things go wrong as always. And there's a dark, unnatural, like horror that lies at the center, which is not even got to in this particular salvage. Salvage is the word we're looking. So yeah,
that's what got me both S's.
Yeah, if you like those like influences, you'll probably enjoy this. I will say I don't want to be mean. I just say the art is a little uneven in places. This is the first book that these guys have done, so that's to be expected. And I'm sure it'll only get better as it goes along. But if you're interested in like an 80s style, like horror romp with straights, go for that one.
Yeah, looks like something from what's this? Journey into Mystery or something.
Oh yeah. Like definitely inspired by those old comics, like those old horror titles. Hey, Spedsy.
That's an awesome story.
That sounds like something I'd say. So now, what else have I got on my pile? It's a shorter pile tonight, and I thought I had more on it, but I've got this one, and this is like, how awkward. This is this comic by Haydn Spurrell. I don't know if you've heard about this guy, but he's like an up-and-coming writer, comics writer. So this is Rick McClune, Dead or Alive, second fastest gun in the West. It's a Western. It's well put together. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I mean, being a Western, I don't know if it like did anything new. It's hard to do new things in a Western.
No,
the genre has been around for so long. But having said that, it moves along at a nice clip. I got a real sense that it was inspired by the old spaghetti westerns, sort of like the Italian-produced ones, which always were like a little bit more morally grey, a little bit more uncertain in what they're doing, a little bit less black and white. It's got an interesting story, and it's got a deliberately ambiguous ending, which like some people like that. Hey, Dave, how's it going? So if you like ambiguous endings, then this is definitely for you. If you don't like ambiguous endings, I might give you a spoiler. There's an ambiguous ending. You can make of it what you will. But yeah, a good, solid Western style book. Rightio. So I thought I had 4 things in my piles, but I only got 3. So,
no, that's
got
fine.
Any more questions?
Yeah, Brad, while you're on here, tell us about where we can get your comics.
Oh, well, thank you. You can go to AusComX with an X .com. AusComX with an X.com. Or you can go to ownerindie.com, and they're all on there. I just put the latest one up last week. So yeah, okay. I've got my humor title, Tales Too Stupid to Tell. I've got my collection of short stories, Stuff That Never Happened. I've got my steampunk comic, The Monocle, and I'm currently working on some other stuff as well.
Very cool.
Yeah, I know it is.
Yeah, and but, to ask him, just to ask you, because I promised you the last time you were here that I'll ask you about it. How's the sci-fi story going?
That's a great question. I've done a little bit more work on it, but I think my motivation is to have something to say to you every time you ask me that. So I've started coloring page 6, and I'm planning out the rest of the thing. But my whole week has been pretty much disrupted by heading down to Sydney for Supernova, which happened on the weekend. Now, from my point of view, that was a pretty good show, but there's been all sorts of I don't know. I don't know if I should mention it. You know about the controversy that happened there.
Yes, there was a bit of a disturbance, we'll say.
Yeah.
A bit of a disliking of one of the vendors.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot to dislike, let's say that much.
There was a lot to dislike, yes.
Yeah. So for me, from my point of view, I had no idea any of that was going on. There was a lot of people there, a lot of enthusiasm, which was surprising considering the situation in Sydney with COVID and all that. It was definitely well attended. I did fairly well overall, and as always, all the fellow stall holders who were around me were a pleasure to chat with and just hang around while we were going through the day. It was good stuff. But I do have another review of something that I'm consuming at the moment, but I have not finished it yet. Would you like me to have a go?
Yeah, tell us.
Yeah,
tell
go
us
for it. Go, tell us about it.
Okay, so who here is familiar with Sweet Tooth?
Yeah, I've heard. I haven't gotten the chance to read it. I've heard of it,
but I haven't had a chance to read it.
Yeah, well, it was a comic by Jeff Lemire. Came out about, I'm gonna guess, 10 years ago, and they've just released a TV show on Netflix.
I've heard about that.
That's
why I've heard of it. Yes.
There's an 8-issue series. I've watched the first 6. It's completely like, I read the book 10 years ago, so I'm not exactly sure what happens, but I'm pretty sure that this series is completely different in almost every respect, except like of some of the visuals to what happens in the actual book. But I've found it pretty interesting so far. I've really enjoyed it. It's taking a much more. Jeff Lemire is generally pretty cynical. Let's say it's not happy-go-lucky stuff that happens with Jeff Lemire. Mm-hmm. Jeff Lemire's create-owned stuff. This is a much more hopeful book, but it has its own cynicism, and it's telling its own story. I can say, if you read the original book, you may be disappointed. If you didn't read the original book, you'll find it an interesting take on a post-apocalyptic sort of story.
Okay.
It's with DC right now, yeah? I think it used to be Vertigo.
That's right. What else? The only other comic I have to review, which I just found, I did a quick review on issue 1 last time.
Yeah.
Issue 2. Yep. Issue 2 of Honor Bound by Ollie Ward. More strange sci-fi. It's like, I'll just say it's definitely different. Definitely like not what you expect. This is the second comic that Ollie's ever done. Mm-hmm. And it's obviously he's improved from the first one. The artwork is still a bit rough around the edges, but as a rough artist myself, I totally understand that. But I'll say you will find this entertaining, and you will not expect what you get out of it. Because, looking at the cover, what sort of comic do you think this is?
It's Knights and Robots, and
I'm not too sure actually.
That's right. It's
very, like clean fun.
It's very medieval Samurai Jack.
Let's say there's I don't want to ruin it, but there's some crazy stuff in there. So this is like someone who's like young and excited and like has boundless enthusiasm and is doing it. That's the best. Awesome. That's the best review I can give for it.
Awesome. I've actually written his name down to look him up, and I haven't had a chance to.
Yeah.
Ollie, that is. Yeah.
Also, cool. So that's everything I've got. I've bought a stack of new comics on the weekend, but I haven't had a chance to read them yet.
No, that's
I've been recovering from the drive back from Sydney.
Ah, you drove there. Yes, that would take a while to recover from.
Well, it was the cheapest way to go. So that's me. I'm cheap all over.
Nice. You got to be in this industry.
Yes, indeed.
Well, thank you very much, Brad.
No worries, Shane.
Yeah. So, do you think you'll have those read by next week? Do you want to come back on next week?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
if there's
awesome.
a chance to chat with you, Shane and Jerome. Of course I'll read it.
Yeah, we'll make this a regular.
I like reading.
Yeah, would love to have you back because it saves me from needing to find time to read some myself.
Well, that sounds like the best possible reason.
Time is not my friend. Time is not my friend. Neither is sleep. Time and sleep. Neither are my friends.
Okay, so I'll throw together. I'll read through what I got, and I will have another 4 or 5 books to discuss with you next week.
Yep, and I will try to read something between now and then. It's just been a shocker of a week, so.
Now I'll check back with you again next week, Brad.
Thanks, Jerome.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Brad.
Thanks.
Jerome will pick on you next week, and that'll be it for the show. Thank you very much, everyone who watched. We'll talk about some more indie Australians next week. And, we'll get Brad on again to talk about what he's read this week, the week coming. And see you, everyone.
See you guys.
Have a good night.
Good night, guys.
Night.
See you.